Hello everyone, my name is Kennedy Spear and the theory I chose for my final project in COM 3000 is social penetration theory. Social penetration theory. What is it? The clear-cut definition of the Introducing Communication Theory Analysis and Application book says is that it is a process of bonding that moves a relationship from superficial to more intimate. But basically, everyone starts as strangers, and it is the timeline of becoming closer with someone and potentially becoming romantically involved. Relationships follow some kind of trajectory, and that is one of two very important definitions of SPT, or social penetration theory. The other is self-disclosure. Trajectory is the pathway to closeness, and self-disclosure is purposeful process of revealing information about yourself to others. It is noted that self-disclosure is the key to moving a relationship forward to closeness. This diagram here is a very good representation of social penetration theory, because there are many levels that you have to move through to get close to one another. The levels are here, and the first one is superficial and moves down to care. Assumptions of SPT. Why are they important? There are 4 assumptions of SPT, and they all have important points to help us understand SPT better. The first assumption is relationships progress from non-intimate to intimate. This was already mentioned above, but is a very clear-cut assumption that people can easily understand. The second assumption is relational development is generally systematic and predictable. Although many factors can interfere with this assumption, relational development still remains predictable and follows some kind of accepted standard and pattern of progress. An example could include the fact that the only way a relationship can grow is if it takes the necessary and predictable steps to do so. For example, this could be seeing each other more often, meeting family members, etc. The third assumption is relational development includes deep penetration and dissolution. These are also 2 important definitions of SPT. Deep penetration is the slow breaking down of a relationship, and dissolution is the dismissal of the relationship altogether. These are important because every relationship encounters turbulence and nothing is perfect. An example could be a huge fight that a couple had that caused a halt or breaking down of the relationship, but with time, eventually the couple comes to a resolution. The fourth assumption is self-disclosure is at the core of relationship development. This was also mentioned earlier, but it continues to be the most important. A relationship cannot progress without self-disclosure. An example of this would be expressing your feelings about a past relationship you had, or the struggle you have since your mother's passing. This kind of information grows people closer together. This image here is a really good representation of self-disclosure, because each person is sharing information that connects them together like a puzzle. Strengths and weaknesses of SPT. What are they? 2 strengths of SPT is that the theory is roughly 40 years old, meaning it has a lot of background and has been utilized many times. Another strength of SPT is it is easily understood to help better and move forward in relationships. 2 weaknesses of SPT is that not all relationships are the same, and it makes it hard to test as a whole. A second weakness is self-disclosure can be considered much more complex. Connections to real life and my first project. My first meta theory project emphasized the fact that communication is key and is a never-ending process. I sometimes lack communication with my boyfriend because of my body language and other things that I do, so when I hear or see that phrase, my mind automatically goes to us. I also focus on socio-psychological tradition. Socio-psychological tradition focuses on the individual and the interpersonal interaction/influences. But this basically means someone's behavior is influenced by something else. When it comes to my current project, this can all be related. Communication is key to a relationship, just like self-disclosure. Self-disclosure to someone can often persuade them to do the same to you, and that is what socio-psychological tradition is all about. Overall, the simple act of talking to one another can build many strong and healthy relationships along with other factors. Pictured here are my boyfriend and I from 2015, 17, and 18. My relationship is how I easily relate to SPT. Like mentioned in my paper that only Professor Heisler was able to read, my boyfriend Spencer and I started to talk to one another before school let out a couple of years ago, but eventually broke things off because he was going to Canada that summer to try out for a hockey team, and if he were to make it, he'd live there for months at a time. About a week later, after we were both upset, we communicated what we were feeling and decided to give it a try. By self-disclosing what we were feeling, we started a relationship. He ended up making a team but decided on his education instead, so here we are 3.5 years later. We continue to use SPT to move further in our relationship. At the beginning, it was very superficial and has progressed to intimate over time. We also followed the predictability of a young relationship and also have encountered deep penetration. Thankfully, we have moved through any turbulence that came our way. We also continue to self-disclose what we are feeling and any new information that comes about. I hope this helped with social penetration theory. Thank you for watching and listening.